Over the weekend, Barry Silbert, founder of the digital currency group, tweeted that 2021 will be the year of privacy, decentralization, and censorship resistance. Will it or will it not be? We are speaking about this with my guest today, Vince Lanci. He's the founder of Echobay Partners. He's also a frequent contributor to Zero Hedge and considered an industry insider. Vince, it's always nice to be with you. Happy New Year. Happy everything. Welcome to our Outlook series.
Thanks. Happy New Year, and thank you for having me on this.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of ground to cover. A lot of news came out over the weekend. So our focus here today will be Bitcoin, what's happening with the price action. But first, the UK sounding the alarm on Bitcoin, saying people who invest in cryptocurrencies could lose all their money. This is the warning from the UK's financial regulator as the price of Bitcoin, as we're speaking here now, Vince, I don't know what it's going to be doing tomorrow, retreating from its highs of 42,000. On top of that, one of the country's largest banks, HSBC, coming out saying they will not process cryptocurrency payments or allow customers to bank money from digital wallets. While other leading banks in the country will accept transfers from digital wallets to current accounts, many will not allow customers to use their credit cards to buy or sell Bitcoin. So basically, know your customer in full effect here in the UK when it comes to cryptocurrency. Is this the future? More clampdowns await Bitcoin, Vince?
Yeah, you gave me that's a big lead in.
A lot of info for you there.
The answer, well, I mean, you know how I like to address things in an anal retentive way, so I'll try that. Okay, the last thing first, HSBC, the clampdown concept. Yeah, I don't think they want to use the word clampdown, but that's what's happening. The success of Bitcoin has put it on the radar. One thing I think banks and central planners don't like is headlines of inroads being made in the areas of decentralization. So for the right reasons, with adverse effects on the product, you're going to see things like know your customer, which you brought up, invoked. I'm a bank, I won't accept funds from Bitcoin unless I know where that money's coming from. That's the whole not fostering criminal enterprises. There's the volatility, which is there's lawsuits waiting to happen on that. There's going after the OTC exchanges for these products. There will be, I mean, in summary, there will be more regulation. And what they can't regulate, if they can't regulate the product, they will regulate the users of the product, which is what the know your customer thing does.
Let's dissect a lot of what you're saying there. All good stuff. Does this start a domino effect? The UK is first. Does it spill over to the US next? How far down the line does it go?
I think it goes all the way down the line. And I'm not sounding the death knell for Bitcoin. I'm positive the product as well as the concepts behind it. But central banks and regulatory agencies have basically formed a global unity now. So the UK may be first. They may be a red herring. Other countries may be looking at it, but you can rest assured other measures will be taken. They're all in communication with each other. Central banks work together, regulators work together, it happens.
So is this central banks rising up and saying, no, Bitcoin, you're not going to bring us down?
I think the banking industry, Bitcoin is money without borders, okay? And if you don't have money with borders, then you can't ring fence your tax base. People are going to use it for tax evasion and what have you. And that's not being cynical. Whether it's used enough to warrant the clampdown it's going to get, I don't know. But I'll make a prediction that there'll be a Fed coin or something like that in the next 6 months to a year while they're throttling the behavior on cryptocurrencies. It's going to happen. It has to. Probably digital wallets too.
Well, we already, we're seeing China in the process of rolling out a digital currency. Right. The euro has plans to roll out some digital form of their euro. So is that the future, Vince?
Yeah, it has to be. Now I'm not an expert on how it manifests, but I can say in terms of the participants, the United States will probably be last. And I don't mean dead last in terms of doing it, but when you are the global reserve currency, and you are the US, you are the incumbent, you can afford to wait and learn from others' mistakes. You don't have to rush ahead. I'm not saying China is going to make mistakes. I mean, they're authoritarian, state-controlled capitalist country, so they can make mistakes and get away with it. But the US has the luxury of waiting to see how UK regulation goes, or waiting to see how European central bank behavior with their own coin goes. So that's my feeling on it.
So this run up in Bitcoin, a 300% rise, 300%.
Right.
Is it coming back to haunt Bitcoin? Because yeah, it's attracted the public's attention, institutional investors' attention, but all these watchdogs now, financial watchdogs. So, is this enough to deflate the price?
That's a really good question. We've talked about Batman before, years ago. Do you remember in one of the movies, Bane says, "Success has defeated you"?
You know my love for Batman.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yes.
I think it's George Clooney, though. That's the one you like.
Michael Keaton, best Batman, but side note, yes.
I know. But seriously, success has put them on the radar, number one. Number two, success has put crypto coins on the radar, number one. Number two, and this is important, but it's not readily understood. One of the pros of Bitcoin's proponents is that there's a limited supply. Therefore, it can only go up. And that's the whole printing fiat creates, inflation in Bitcoin. And you know what? That's a valid point. But there's another side to that. When you get out of your early stages and you get into adolescence, right? I have to say, Bitcoin's a teenager now. There's growing pains. And I don't know if we'll get through the growing pains, but it goes like this. When you get to a certain size, you start attracting a certain bigger user. And if your float is too small, meaning you are limited in your size, there's no liquidity for getting in and out without moving the market. In the FX markets, you see this with Australia. G7 country, relatively small currency float. And so because of that, central banks won't hold a lot of Australian dollars in reserve. So the limitation on the float actually at a certain point works to kill price and liquidity on the other side of the coin. So you're right. I mean, the success and small float could be a problem for it.
And that's a really good analogy. And I guess you could really apply to anything in life. The bigger you become, the more success you get, the more eyes are upon you. You can apply it really to anything in life. But, those opponents of Bitcoin would argue this is one of the reasons they don't want to touch Bitcoin is that governments can unplug the coin. So with the central banks noticing, with some banks like the case in the UK taking notice, is this a reality for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there's like a three-pronged attack. Attack might not be the right word, but there's a three-pronged approach towards making cryptos and Bitcoin heal. And I'm not saying it's coordinated, but it ends up being towards the same end. The first is regulation. Can you regulate it? And to the extent that they can, they will. Maybe it's where servers operate. Maybe it's how banks take the money. Second would be if you can't regulate it, can you protect the potential users of it? So we'll let you buy it, but you can only buy it through PayPal. We'll let you buy it, but you can't trade it. We'll let you trade futures, but it's on an exchange, not OTC. Mm-hmm. The third thing is, and this is the main threat if you're looking at it from a banking point of view. The things that make Bitcoin more than the other blockchain backed currencies special is anonymity, fungibility, meaning it can cross over borders, and the ability to disintermediate banks, which means you disintermediate credit lawyers, which means you disintermediate a whole white collar generation of workers. I don't think that the Fed has any interest in that happening. It's all about job security for everyone these days. So I don't know if I'm answering you directly, but that's
No,
the idea.
I hear what you're saying, and I also want to get your thoughts on the price action, because the other hat you wear and have worn is you're a trader.
Right.
So when you see these type of corrections, like I said, we're speaking today, Monday. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow to the price. What do you make of it?
Well, certainly anyone who has bought the dip in Bitcoin has been right, except in 2017, you would have had to wait, 3 years to be right. So is the current behavior, whether it be today or tomorrow, an exception? I'm not selling it, meaning I'm not shorting it, because of my fear of that sort of thing happening. But I'm objective about it in this sense. 3 pieces of news came out, and let's put it this way, since PayPal made it available, the weekends became buy events. It's almost like someone's buying Bitcoin because on Monday they're going to get to sell it to someone on PayPal. A little bit paranoid, but you know how I think about things like that. But this weekend, before the weekend, you had, as you alluded to, HSBC and the UK banks. That's bearish. You had the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency last week, U.S. Office of the Comptroller of Currency, actually permitted banks, which is not a bad thing in and of itself, to create their own blockchains and clap their own payment systems on top of it, which creates competition. That's bearish. And then you had some small bullish news come out this morning about a company starting a mining operation because it was going to be that much cooler to be involved in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin went from down 7 to down 18%, in that time frame. And I think lower before higher. But I'm not putting my money on the line on that. So you have to take that for
When you see calls of 100,000 or Max Kaiser's 220,000, Vince Lanci thinks,
oh, you're going to do that to me again.
Thinks what? I'm not saying put a price, but what do you think of these big calls?
Oh, I think, and this is how Bitcoin's like gold. Yeah, there's some new supply coming on in gold, but gold and Bitcoin are pretty much the supply is known, which means you price demand only. You don't price supply. You can't grow more of it. You can't pull it out of the ground faster. You can't get it. If you're pricing demand and not supply, then you're pricing a very emotional market. Could it go to $100,000? Yeah. I mean, if you were to ask me, can gold go to $10,000 or $20,000? Yeah. If you were to monetize dollar debt in gold, it would. I don't think. Here's why I think I'd be skeptical of 6-figure valuations for Bitcoin. I don't think any central bank wants a product like Bitcoin getting that kind of press and headlines. I don't think it happens. If it does happen, it doesn't last long.
Final note, this also came up during the Max Kaiser interview that by now.
By the way, that was an awesome interview.
Thank you.
Max is Max.
Thank you. And yes, he is. You're an industry insider, that's why I want to ask you this. He brought up the possibility of a central bank failing or calling it a rebrand this year. He says it's the ECB. Are you hearing anything on that?
No, I am not hearing anything on that, but he's European based. He might be more connected on that. Maybe I'm parsing words. Central banks can't fail. They print money. What fails is the economy. Central bank doesn't fail. I mean, as arrogant as this is, I think it might have been Christine Lagarde said, we can't fail, meaning we could just print more money. In terms of rebranding or maybe the reset concept that everyone's talking about, that I think is actually happening, but not being discussed. Meaning, when Basel III was passed in 13 or however when they enacted it, European banks started buying more gold. And I think that's because every time they print a bond with a negative interest rate, they hedge their euro. So there's probably a lot more gold in their banks than they've told us. And that, in a sense, is a rebranding. So, I think it's going to be a slow rebrand, if any.
Vince, Lanci, I always appreciate your thoughts. Good conversation here. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniela. See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. And thank you for watching. We'll have much more for you. So be sure to stay tuned to Stansberry Research. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. Thanks for watching. I'm Daniela Cambone.